Hello and welcome to my show Indus Cuisine, and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. We're back with a new episode from the heart of Pakistan. Today's recipe is very interesting, and this recipe is a part of the province of Kashmir. We're making a recipe which is known as the Goshtaba. This recipe is a version of the meatball which you have in the Western society in the world, and how the Kashmiris make it we'll teach you today. This recipe has a very short history, and I'll tell you it's very interesting. Basically, there are wazwans over there. These people are the local chefs of Kashmir, and their job is that they go for big dinners, big wedding parties, and they go as a crew and they start cooking over there with their traditional techniques. Today's recipe is one of those recipes that they cook for the people for these big events, and this recipe is known as Goshtaba. The Kashmiri cooking does not require a lot of spices such as coriander powder, cumin powder or red chili powder. They go towards more things like the green cardamom you easily find in those areas, then the black cardamom, some cloves, then they use onions which are already fried, and then they use onions which they'll cook in the food. So it's a very different type of a cuisine. It looks a little like the Pakistani cuisine, or you could say the cuisine from Punjab and Sindh, but the ingredients or the masalas are very different in terms of the flavor they will produce in their recipe. So what are the ingredients for today's recipe? I'll let you know. So firstly, you need around 1 kg of beef mince. So over here I have the beef mince, but what we'll do is we'll mince it further, but with another technique. Back in the day, what they used to do was they used to take a piece of meat like this, and then they used to take a cooking hammer which was made of wood in those days. Today we're using like a steel hammer, and then they used to keep bashing it till the time it would convert into this smooth pulp. It takes a lot of time, but what we'll do is I process the meat once at least through the machine, and we'll press it more with the hammer so that it gets that same texture. If you have time, you can do the original technique also. Over here I have another kg of meat. Why? Because I want some stew which I'll be creating from the pressure cooker. Apart from that, the ingredients you need is like 2 onions, you need some oil, you need around almost 4 cups, or you could say 1 liter of yogurt. Then you need some coriander leaves, you need some mint leaves, you need some cloves, you need black cardamom, green cardamom, you need some salt to taste, you need some ginger, some garlic, and then you'll be needing some fried onions. Fried onions are very easy to find in the markets. If you go to any store nowadays, fried onions would be on the store's counter. Why? Because not only in Pakistani cuisine, but also in cuisine such as Malaysian, Indonesian, Thai, some recipes do use fried onions, so people do require this a lot in their daily cooking. So what we'll do first is we'll start making the broth, or one could say the bone broth which people make, or the stew. So for that, what we need is we need some beef, but we won't be using all the beef. For this, we will just take the trimmings of the meat. Now what is trimming? Trimming is the part of the meat which we usually don't eat. Trimmings are basically the fat. So I've wrapped it up like this. I'm just going to take it off slowly and gradually. Why? Because I do not want to damage the meat in. I'll just take this and I'll throw it on the side. So for this you need a pressure cooker, but before that I'll take a paring knife and I'll slowly just take the trimmings out. So just flatten this piece out. Wherever you see the fat, you need to take the fat out. So you have to have a sharp knife and just start cutting. I'm teaching you how to do this without the bone which people use. If you want to use some bones also, you can use that to increase the flavor, but I am just going to use the trimmings for today's recipe. So slowly and gradually just take whatever fat you can see out, which I am right now, and this fat will be used in the recipe. Wherever you see the silver lining, just start cutting through and take this part out also, because we'll be using this in the main recipe today. So slowly and gradually I'll just take a little bit of meat from this piece, and then I'll take some more fat out. It's my job to teach you, that's why I try doing everything on the screen, even though we have limited time. If I teach you well, then only you can cook well at home. So I'm using my paring knife. Why? Because it's easier to handle when the pieces or the trimmings are smaller than usual. So as you can see, this is not a lot of meat. This is just a little bit of meat, but when we flavor the water in which we shall boil this, you will see that you'll get a very nice result out of it. So just take a look. If you can see some more trimmings you could need, then you'll take some more. I'll just take another small piece of beef, which I'll cut from here. So let's say I've just taken around 150 grams of trimmings and a little bit of beef. I'm going to roll this up and I'm going to keep it in the fridge again, and then I'll show you what to do next. So for this recipe we need some stock, and as I told you, I just took out some beef trimmings, and this beef trimming would be around 150 grams, not more than that. So now what you need is, you need around a liter of water. We'll add that water in the pressure cooker. So transfer the water in the pressure cooker. This is almost a liter and a half, this jug. So I'll leave a little bit in, and that's about it. The other thing what we'll do now is we'll pick up the meat and we'll transfer it into the cooker. Now as you can see, it's almost beef trimmings with a little bit of beef, so we have balanced it out properly. You need to add a few things into this. So what I'll do now is I'll just shift the board and I'll bring up the green one. So now you want to keep the green board. Why? Because we need a few things which we'll be using for this, but before that I'm going to rinse my knife and then bring it back. So now what do you need? You need a little bit of ginger. You could say around a tablespoon equivalent. I'll cut it into 4 pieces. The broth for this is a little different. Then what I'll do is I'll add 2 pieces of green cardamom, but I will put it on the board first and I'll press it a bit so that the seeds are exposed. I'll transfer it here. It will smell nice, the water will be fragrant, and then we'll add around, let's say, half a teaspoon of salt, and that is it. This is done. I'll just add like 2 pieces of cloves and just 1 teaspoon of fried onions. Now we shall cook this for 10 minutes only once the whistle goes off. We are not cooking the water so that we can have the beef. We're cooking the water so that the beef gives its flavor in the water, which will be used then to make the sauce for this main recipe. So I'll increase the heat, and now we shall get to the meat for the main recipe. For that I'll use the board again, the older one, and now we need to get ready with the meat. So I've processed this meat at least once in the mincing machine, remember that. But we will pound it more. So now you just have to flatten the meat out on the board. This will give the meatballs a better, silkier texture. If you have a food processor, or you could also say a chopper, not this one, the other one, you can use that to do this process also, but the texture would be a little different and you won't get this perfect flavor. Okay, so now when you use a cooking hammer, there are 2 sides to it. There's a flat side, and then there's a side which has these bristles on it. When the meat is, you could say, very hard, then you use the bristle side, but if you're just doing it for the beef mince or for veal, use the flat side. So I'll just pound it slowly and gradually. You'll see a little bit of meat just going here and there, but that's part of it. This will take a little bit of time, but it will give you the perfect texture. Now what you'll do is, now you'll start folding it. And as you see, when I fold it and I do this again, there will be some fat coming on the base. This is a process that makes the meatball a little more silkier. Why? Because the beef is being pounded and it's splitting apart even more. We'll just do it at least 3 to 4 times. So I've done it twice now. You have to bring it back together and then flip it again on the other side. This is done. Slowly and gradually, just keep going in. And it's not necessary that you apply all your force, you just have to slowly and gradually deal with the meat. This is done. Now as you can see, there's a lot of beef fat over here. This shows that the pressure was a lot when I was pushing the meat down. So now we have to add some spices to this. But now, what are the spices you need for this recipe? So I'll just push everything on the side and we'll prepare for that. Firstly, what you need is you need to prepare some garlic. So we'll just do it over here. Why? Because we'll mix it on this board. That's why only. I'll take the shredder. I'll take 2 pieces of garlic and I'll slowly shred it. This recipe does not require a lot of garlic when it comes to making the mince. Remember that. This is done. As you can see, this part of the cooker is out, which means it's almost ready to start the counting time. Okay. On the other hand, you'll be requiring some ginger, which I'll shred over here. And this is it. Shake it up and pull the remaining ginger from beneath. Keep it over here, do not mix it right now. And now take some green cardamom, around 4 cloves, and just open it. What I want from the cardamom is I want the seeds. But what we'll do is we'll go for a short break, and once I'll clear it out, I'll let you know what to do next. Keep watching Indus Cuisine. Welcome back. You're watching Indus Cuisine and I'm your chef Basim Akhund. During the break, I just did nothing. I was just waiting for the meat to cook, and I just transferred all the meat from the red board to this place. So now what you need to do is I've picked up some fresh pieces of green cardamom. We shall press them like this, and then we are basically opening the pods. This is a little technical, but not too technical. I'll just take out the seeds, the black ones over here, and these are filled with flavor. Remember that. In Pakistan, people also use this as a mouth freshener, and there are companies that basically pack them up beautifully and sell something which is available for, you could say, 0.5 pennies, and they sell it for like $1. This is how profitable this green piece of ingredient is in Pakistan. It's one of the most expensive ingredients when it comes to cooking in our locally grown or locally sourced ingredients over here. So maybe at times you'll find some seeds to be a bit towards the darker side and some could be towards the lighter brown side. It's fine, that's just Mother Nature. Everything you can use properly. Okay, so now this is done. I'll just pass my knife through it. I want to further open the pods. Some things are very small but hold a lot of flavor. This is done. Now what I'll do is I shall now start mixing everything together. For that I need a red board which is at the back. So now what I'll do is I'll just pick this up, place the board over here. Now we shall start mixing all the ingredients. For that, first you need to place the meat, spread out. Now when you see cooking in the Kashmiri region, they won't be adding other spices such as black pepper, they won't be adding red chilies in this, they'll just be using a few things. Firstly, what we'll do is we'll add around a teaspoon of salt because this is almost a kilogram of meat. Spread it out. We'll take around 2 tablespoons of crushed and fried green onions. We'll pick up all the black cardamom and spread out fairly. It's very powerful, so do not add too much. Why? Because it will change the whole recipe otherwise. As you can see, I'm sourcing every piece. I'm not letting it go to waste. Why? Because one seed also holds like flavor as compared to anything else, or you could say, let's compare it with some ingredient. So one seed of green cardamom can hold more flavor than one whole tomato for that matter. Okay, so now this is done. We'll just mix it together properly like dough. We're not adding any egg, we're adding nothing in this, remember it. You have to feel that the onion is spreading out in it. You have to do it with your hands, remember it. The more you press it together, the better it will be when you cook it. So usually when you see Pakistani cooking, what do? We either fry these or we either add it to the sauce and then cook it in it. For this recipe, it's a little different. So now this is done. So what we'll do now is we'll pick up some oil, open it up, and we shall just grease our hands. Once you grease your hands, then only you can do with this recipe properly. Okay, you want to make meatballs, so always remember whenever you're making a meatball, you have to keep pressing it together and bring it together. Remember it, if you do not bring it together, you can't cook it evenly. So I'm making a meatball which would be around 55 to 60 grams each. So I've made one. We'll make around, you could say, 10 of these, and then I shall tell you what to do next. So when I took a break, what did I do? I just let the pressure cooker cool down, and as you can see, I just took the broth out. So when you talk about the Kashmiri cooking way or the Kashmiri broth, it's a little more towards the golden side. Why? Because we've used some cardamom in it and we've used some fat from the beef. Otherwise, when we make the broth, what do? We use the bones. So this is the broth, which is a little different, and this thing will take you a long way. On the other hand, what I did was I just made the meatballs and they're ready over here. So for this, what do you have to do is first you have to pick up a medium-sized frying pan, increase the heat and add water in it. So first I'll add water, not too much because we'll add more water towards the end. And once the water comes to boil, we'll add the meatballs in it, not for too long, just for 3 minutes. For this, what you have to do is you have to take 2 pieces of black cardamom, which I'll just put directly in it. I'll take 2 pieces of green cardamom, I'll press them and I'll place them in the water, and I'll take around just, let's say, 2 teaspoons of salt. I'll give this a lid and I'll shift it on the other stove. I'll increase the heat to full over here and put this back to pilot. Now what do you need to do for this recipe? You need to make a sauce, the mother sauce for this recipe. For that, what I'll do is I'll pick up a wok, we'll bring it to heat and we'll start cooking with this now. Okay, so first what do you need? You need some onions. You have to take the root off and throw this in the bin. This goes in. We shall finely slice the onions for this recipe, that's why I took the root out. So just go as close as you can. As thin as you can keep the slice, that's very important. We'll be using around an onion and a half, so I'll keep the other one on the side for later on, remember that. This is done. So I'll keep this onion on the side, and what we'll do is we'll add half a cup of oil. Half a cup of oil goes in. Once it comes to heat, we'll add the onions in. But before that, what I'll do is I'll just take a look at the water over here. The water is almost coming to boil, completely on heat. On the other hand, you need some ginger, which I'll finely firstly slice and keep this on the side. Go really close and make it paper thin. As you can see, that you can see the green color of the board when you keep this piece of ginger. It should be as thin as this. This is just the indication that the ginger is properly cut. The oil has come to heat, the water has come to boil. What I'll do is I'll put both of it on pilot. First we'll go towards the water. You have to multitask for this recipe. And on the other hand, I'll just show you, I'll pick up the pan here. The black cardamom and the green cardamom both have inflated. Why? Because they were dry before, and once they got heat, they gained size, which means they lost flavor also in this. And this is what we want. We want it to seep in. So now what I'll do is I'll just place the meatballs in the pan very smoothly. And now I'll give it a lid. Bring it back to boil and cook this with the lid on just for 3 minutes. The heat does not need to be really high, so keep it on medium heat and let it cook. I'll rinse my hands and I'll tell you what to do next. So as you can see, we've kept this to boil. Now the next thing what I'll do is I'll get ready with the onions. So the onions for this recipe need to be translucent, remember that. So hot oil, onions go hand in hand. We'll keep the remaining fried onions on the side for later on. I'll tell you when. We shall just take the lid off now and just tilt it and keep it so that the water doesn't come out. Okay, the water needs to be not really high on heat, just needs to be properly balanced. Add around a quarter teaspoon of salt so that the onion starts sweating. I'm using a wok. Why? Because this recipe's sauce will be really fine and thin, remember that. Keep it on the side, increase the heat to medium. Give it a lid and let it cook for 2 minutes. Till the time this is cooking, what we'll do on the other hand is we'll pick up some garlic, around 3 cloves. And now remember what I'm doing. I'm going to take this garlic and I'm going to put it in the water over there after smashing it. Why? Because we'll be using 2 tablespoons of the water from this into this. Why? Because I want that garlic flavor. This is how things are done and that's how I'm teaching you. And now what I'll do is I'll just add the ginger into this pan. So just pick up the ginger, which is thinly sliced, goes here. Pick the remaining up, you don't need it. Keep it on the side and mix it up. Now, whatever you've used, you don't need, keep it at the back. And now increase the heat to full over here. While this is cooking, what I'll do is I'll pick up some coriander fresh. And I'll take off a little bit of the sticks from here around 2 inches and I'll throw it on the side. This is done. Turn it around, fold it and start finely chopping it. We're making a clear soup for this recipe. Remember that it's a very clear recipe, very clear soup which will give out flavor. Over here the meatballs are done. It's been 3 minutes. You don't want to cook it even more. Just stop the heat, transfer all of this over here and keep cooking. Okay, now I'll reduce the heat and I'll add some fried onions on top. Why? Because I'm using fried onions with normal onions to give it this nice flavor. I'm keeping the recipe very simple. And now we need the green cardamom, around 6 pieces, which will be placed and broken and then added to the pan. I'll keep it here, press it a bit and transfer it here. This is done. Now you need some pieces of the black cardamom, around 3 pieces. I'll just break it with my hand like this, displace it so that the seeds go in and just pop the skin out. The skin is not required, remember that. This is done. At times they are hollow from inside, so pick up the thicker one which has more seeds and that is it. Increase the heat to full and now add this broth over here into this after just 30 seconds of frying the seeds. Now for this recipe, everything will be done on extreme high heat, so let this cook. And now what we'll do is we'll pick up this ladle and we'll start transferring the meatballs over here. As I've told you, I've just cooked it for 3 minutes. I haven't cooked it for too long. So they're 50% cooked only. We'll give it high heat for another 5 minutes and it will be done. Be very careful, we haven't added any form of, you could say, egg, flour into this that would hold it together. So it's all meat coming together in the most simplest way possible. Slowly and gradually, you have to remember this. Okay, now I'll just take around 2 tablespoons of water from here, transfer it here. Give this a lid, place this over here. I don't need the bowl anymore, I'll keep it at the back. Keep my station very clean because that's very important, and reduce the heat over here a little bit. So now I'll let this cook on high heat for at least 5 minutes, and once this is done, I'll let you know what to do. So as you can see, everything is done now. And I told you it's a clear soup recipe. So as you can see, the water or the gravy in it is very nice and clear. It is cooked completely, but the last thing that needs to go in this recipe is the yogurt I told you about. So what I'll do is I'll just take the wrap off and I'll start slowly adding the yogurt into this. Place it over here, and this is it. Place it at the back. Now on high heat, we'll start mixing it. But you need to remember why, because we're making, you could say, meatballs over here. You will always do it on the side and slowly and gradually it will mix on the other side. Do not touch the meatballs. Why? Because otherwise the meat will start breaking. I am just mixing it over here towards the edge, and as you can see, the color is spreading throughout the recipe. And now when you want to mix it, pick it up, throw it on the side. And this is done. Now what I'll do is I'll just dish it out, but before that we'll take 3 to 4 cloves, place it in the water or the gravy, let it come to boil, and then dish it out. I'll show you the final look of the recipe just in a bit. As you can see, today's recipe is ready. We made Goshtaba today from the region of Kashmir. It's a beautiful recipe, and as you can see, it's like a clear water soup. It's not heavy on the spices, it's not heavy on the masala. Try this recipe, let me know. You can have this recipe with rice or with naan bread. I hope you liked today's recipe. It was easy, but had a lot of steps we have to follow properly. I'll see you in another episode of Indus Cuisine. Take care of yourself, lovely people. Bye-bye.